The bright studio lights shone down on the set, reflecting off the polished floors and the shiny furniture. The audience buzzed with excitement, their whispers and laughter filling the large room. Cameras rolled, microphones were checked, and the crew moved quickly behind the scenes, ensuring everything was perfect. Today was not just any episode. Today, the talk show host, known for his sharp wit and fearless jokes, was about to welcome a very special guest. He sat in his leather chair, leaning slightly forward, adjusting his tie with a confident smirk. He loved moments like this, the thrill of the live audience, the anticipation in the air, and the chance to tease and challenge anyone who sat across from him. For years, he had built a reputation as a host who could make anyone laugh, even if it meant poking fun at their beliefs. He often joked about spirituality, religion, and the kind of faith he found strange or unusual. It was all in the name of entertainment, and he knew his audience loved it. Today, however, he had set his sights on someone different. Someone calm, thoughtful, and quietly admired by millions around the world. Keanu Reeves, the actor known for his humility, kindness, and almost mysterious aura, was scheduled to appear on the show. The host had spent weeks preparing, thinking of clever ways to turn the conversation into a comedic spectacle. He imagined the audience laughing at Keanu's gentle answers, at the way the actor spoke about life, belief, and karma. He chuckled to himself, picturing the scene in his mind: a man who was known for taking life seriously, being teased on national television. The host looked at the camera crew, his eyes shining with excitement. "This is going to be perfect," he whispered under his breath. "The audience will eat this up." He rehearsed his jokes once more, making sure each line was sharper than the last. He practiced the timing, the pauses, the facial expressions, all calculated to get the maximum reaction from the viewers. Meanwhile, backstage, the audience members were settling into their seats. Many had come specifically for today's episode. Some held signs, others carried cameras and phones, eager to capture every moment. They chatted excitedly, sharing their predictions about what would happen when Keanu appeared. "I heard he's really humble," one woman whispered to her friend. "I wonder how he will respond to the host's jokes." Her friend shrugged, smiling. "He's Keanu Reeves. He probably won't get upset. He's too kind for that." Back in the studio, the host stood up and walked toward the main stage. The cameras followed him, zooming in on his confident stride. He waved at the audience, who clapped and cheered loudly. The host smiled, soaking in the energy. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice carrying across the room, "today we have someone truly special. A man who has inspired millions with his acting, his kindness, and yes, his unique perspective on life. Please welcome Keanu Reeves." The audience erupted in applause. Some whistled, others jumped to their feet, clapping their hands. The host turned toward the side entrance, waiting for Keanu to appear. A few moments later, the doors opened, and Keanu walked in. He moved with a quiet grace, smiling gently at the crowd. He was dressed simply, his dark hair slightly tousled, his eyes calm and thoughtful. There was no rush, no dramatic gesture, just a man walking onto a stage, greeted by hundreds of excited faces. As Keanu approached, the host's mind raced. He straightened his jacket and put on his best smirk. "Well, Mr. Reeves," he said, extending a hand, "welcome to the show. It's great to have you here. I have to say, though, I'm a little nervous. You have a reputation for, well, unusual beliefs." The audience laughed softly, sensing the playful jab. Keanu shook the host's hand gently. "Thank you for having me," he said in his calm, soft voice. "It's nice to be here." His eyes scanned the audience for a moment, acknowledging their excitement, before settling back on the host. "I'm looking forward to our conversation." The host leaned back in his chair, crossing one leg over the other. "Unusual beliefs," he repeated, smirking. "Now, I know our audience loves stories about karma, spirituality, and meditation. So, I thought, why not talk about all the, let's say, mysterious things you believe in? The audience laughed, some clapping at his words. Keanu nodded politely. Well, I try to live simply, he said. I believe in being kind, in treating people well, and in doing my best to make the world a little better. Some people call that faith. Others call it karma or energy. For me, it's just life. The host raised an eyebrow, clearly amused. Just life, he said. You're telling me that all these stories about karma, meditation, and spiritual energy, it's just life? That sounds simple. Almost too simple. The audience chuckled, sensing the playful tension. Keanu smiled faintly. Sometimes, the simplest things are the most powerful, he said. We don't need grand gestures or complicated ideas. Treating others well, staying humble, and doing what you can to help, that's enough for me. The host laughed, leaning forward. I have to admit, that's a very peaceful way to look at things. But don't you ever worry that it might not be enough? That maybe the universe doesn't care about kindness? Keanu looked thoughtful for a moment. I believe the universe is a reflection of how we live our lives, he said. If we act with respect and love, it comes back to us. If we act with hate or selfishness, that comes back too. It's not magic, it's life. The audience was quiet now, listening intently. Even some of the crew stopped moving, drawn in by the calm and sincerity in Keanu's words. The host blinked, momentarily taken aback. He had expected a light, joking conversation, but there was a depth in Keanu's voice that made him pause. Well, the host said finally, smiling again, I guess that's interesting. But let's see if your beliefs can handle a little test. He reached for a small card on the table and began reading a story about a challenge Keanu had faced in his life, a moment where things didn't go as planned. The audience leaned forward, curious to see how Keanu would respond. Keanu listened carefully, nodding slightly as the story unfolded. Life is full of unexpected things, he said softly. We can plan, we can try to control, but some things will always surprise us. The way we respond, that's what matters. The host laughed, shaking his head. You're too calm. I was expecting, I don't know, a little outrage. Something dramatic. But you're just smiling, explaining, and making sense of it all. The audience chuckled, some whispering that Keanu's calm demeanor was almost magical. Keanu's smile widened just slightly. I've learned that anger and frustration don't help. They cloud our minds. Calmness, understanding, and patience, those are more powerful than any joke or insult. The host leaned back in his chair, feeling a mix of amusement and curiosity. He had expected to lead the conversation, to tease and provoke, but something about Keanu's presence made him hesitate. He could feel the audience shifting, sensing that this would not be a usual episode. The show continued, the host trying to regain his usual control, but each question he asked only revealed more of Keanu's gentle wisdom. The audience laughed at the light moments, but they also listened closely to the serious ones. By the end of the segment, there was a sense of wonder in the room, an unspoken acknowledgement that something unusual and special was happening on that stage. And as the cameras rolled, capturing every moment, the host realized that today's episode might not go the way he had planned. The lights in the studio glowed warmly as the show moved deeper into the conversation. The audience leaned forward in their seats, their eyes fixed on the stage. The host, still wearing his confident smirk, felt the energy of the room. He loved moments like this, when the audience laughed at his jokes, when the cameras captured every expression, and when he thought he was in full control. Today, however, things were beginning to feel different. He adjusted his jacket and cleared his throat, looking directly at Keanu Reeves. Now, Mr. Reeves, he said, his tone playful but sharp, let's talk about your unusual beliefs. Some people say you believe in karma. Others say you meditate. Some even claim you have strange ideas about the universe. Can you explain this, for the skeptics out there? The audience chuckled. Some leaned closer to see how Keanu would respond. The host was ready to lean in, smirk wide, and take any small pause or hesitation as a chance to tease him further. Keanu's eyes were calm, gentle. He smiled faintly and nodded. I try to live in a way that respects other people, he said. I believe in being kind, in helping others when I can, and in learning from every experience. Some call it faith. Some call it karma. For me, it's just how I try to live my life. The host raised an eyebrow and laughed softly. Just how you live your life, he said. You mean, no magic powers, no mystical forces, nothing extraordinary at all? The audience laughed again. Some clapped, clearly enjoying the playful tension. Keanu shook his head. No magic. Life itself is extraordinary. Every day is a chance to be better, to help someone, to learn something new. That's enough for me. The host leaned forward suddenly, his eyes glinting with amusement. Come on now, he said. You expect us to believe that simple kindness and humility are enough? That's a little boring, don't you think? Keanu smiled, unbothered. Boring can be beautiful, he said softly. It's not about excitement or drama. It's about making choices that create peace, even in small ways. That can change the world quietly. The audience was quiet for a moment. They had expected humor, they had expected teasing, but what they heard instead was calm, thoughtful wisdom. The host tried to laugh it off, but even he felt a strange shift in the energy of the room. He quickly moved to another topic, one he thought would be safer to mock. Okay, then, he said, holding a card in his hand, let's talk about meditation. Some people say you spend hours doing it. Some even say you have special rituals. Come on, tell us, are you really sitting quietly for hours, chanting some mysterious words? Keanu chuckled softly, his voice calm. I do spend time in quiet thought, he said. But it's not about chanting or rituals. It's about understanding yourself and your place in the world. Being present, noticing life around you, and being grateful for it. That's all. The host laughed louder this time, leaning back in his chair. Wow, sounds almost like a yoga commercial. The audience laughed, but some nodded thoughtfully, as if they understood what Keanu was saying. Some might call it a spiritual practice, Keanu continued. Some might call it a way to live peacefully. I just call it paying attention. The host paused, pretending to think deeply. Paying attention, hey, he said with a smirk. You're telling me that paying attention is your secret to life? And all these stories about karma and energy, they're just life lessons? Keanu nodded. Exactly. Life teaches us in many ways. We see consequences of our actions. We learn from mistakes. We notice when kindness brings joy. That's the energy, the karma. It's not mystical. It's real. The audience was leaning forward now, hanging on every word. Some were surprised at how simple yet powerful Keanu's answers were. The host felt a flicker of uncertainty, something he rarely felt on stage. He tried to regain control. He turned slightly, smiling at the audience. All right, let's have some fun, he said. I want to ask you something tricky. If karma is real, then why does bad luck happen to good people? I mean, some people are kind and amazing, but life still seems unfair to them. How do you explain that? Keanu looked thoughtful. He didn't rush, didn't try to sound clever. He simply spoke with honesty. Life is full of challenges, he said. Sometimes, things happen that are unfair or difficult. That doesn't mean kindness or good intentions are meaningless. It means we have a choice to respond with patience, with love, with understanding, or to respond with anger. The choice itself is powerful. That's the lesson. The host laughed nervously, realizing his joke wasn't landing as he had planned. He leaned forward again, trying to change the tone. So you're saying, bad things happen, and we're supposed to just smile through them? Keanu shook his head gently. Not just smile, he said. Learn. Grow. Help others when you can. That is how we make life meaningful, even when things are hard. The audience murmured, some nodding, some whispering to each other. The host's smirk faded slightly, replaced by a look of curiosity. He had expected comedy, mockery, and maybe a little drama. Instead, he found himself in a thoughtful moment, listening to someone speak with quiet sincerity. Trying to recover, he moved to another tactic. All right, he said, raising his hands, let's test you a little. You've had a long career, met so many people, and faced challenges. Have you ever had a moment when life just didn't make sense? Something that made you question everything? Keanu smiled faintly. Many times, he admitted. Life is unpredictable. Sometimes, the world seems unfair or strange. But in those moments, I try to focus on what I can control: my actions, my choices, and how I treat others. That keeps me grounded. The host laughed again, this time more softly. You're too calm, he said. I thought for sure I'd see some kind of reaction, some anger, some passion. But you're just calm. Always calm. It's frustrating. The audience chuckled, some whispering to each other that Keanu's calmness was almost magical. There was a peacefulness in him that seemed to fill the studio, even overpowering the host's usual energy. The host leaned back, rubbing his forehead. Okay, fine, he said, let's try something else. He pulled out a card with a story about one of Keanu's past challenges, a story of a difficult filming experience where everything went wrong. The audience leaned in, ready for what the host thought would be a perfect opportunity to tease Keanu. Keanu listened carefully, nodding occasionally. Yes, he said softly, that was a difficult time. But every challenge teaches something. It teaches patience, resilience, and the importance of staying calm. That's why I remember it, not for the mistakes, but for the lessons. The host blinked, momentarily speechless. He had expected humor, embarrassment, or at least a surprised reaction. But Keanu's words were simple, clear, and full of quiet wisdom. The audience felt it too. There was a hush in the room, a sense that something unusual was happening. Wow, the host said finally, trying to laugh it off. You really know how to turn a disaster into a lesson in calmness. I've never met anyone like this. Keanu smiled gently. It's just life, he said. We can choose how we respond. That's the power we have. The host leaned back again, feeling a mixture of amusement, curiosity, and a strange respect he hadn't expected. The audience clapped softly, some nodding in agreement. The mood in the studio had shifted. What had started as a playful mocking conversation was turning into something deeper, a moment of reflection, even for the host himself. And as the cameras continued to roll, capturing every expression, every reaction, it became clear that this episode would be unlike any other. The jokes and mockery had lost some of their edge, replaced by something unexpected: the quiet power of calm, thoughtful words, and the surprising impact of genuine kindness. The studio lights glimmered softly as the cameras rolled on, capturing every detail of the stage. The audience was still buzzing from the calm, thoughtful exchange between the host and Keanu Reeves. There was laughter, nods, whispers of admiration, and the occasional gasp as the conversation took a more reflective turn. The host leaned forward in his chair, tapping his fingers on the table, trying to regain control of the narrative. He had expected to lead, to tease, and to provoke dramatic reactions, but Keanu's gentle confidence was quietly dominating the room. Well, Mr. Reeves, the host said, attempting a light laugh, you've managed to dodge all my clever jabs so far. No rolling eyes, no sarcastic comebacks, no dramatic sighs. It's frustrating. The audience chuckled, sensing the playful tension. The host waved his hand as if to suggest, "Come on, give me something to work with." Keanu tilted his head slightly, his eyes calm. "Sometimes, staying calm is stronger than reacting," he said softly. "It's not about winning or losing a conversation. It's about understanding, learning, and sharing kindness." The host paused, blinking. He wasn't used to having his jokes deflected with such quiet wisdom. The audience, sensing the unusual dynamic, leaned in, their attention fixed on every word. Some whispered to each other, admiring how Keanu's calmness was almost magnetic, pulling the energy of the room into a slower, reflective rhythm. Trying to maintain his usual style, the host decided to escalate. He pulled out a small folder with stories about unusual coincidences in Keanu's life, moments that could be spun for laughter or surprise. "All right," he said, smirking, "let's see how your beliefs hold up. Here's a story. You were on set, filming under extremely difficult conditions. Rain, wind, equipment failing, chaos everywhere. People say you just smiled and said it was all part of life. Tell us, were you really that calm, or was it all an act?" Keanu's lips curved into a small smile. "It wasn't an act," he said. "It was a moment of learning. When things go wrong, reacting with frustration doesn't help. I observed, adapted, and focused on what I could do. That's all. Life isn't about controlling everything, it's about handling what comes your way with patience." The host laughed nervously, leaning back. All right," he said. "You're like a Zen master or something. But let's try a little experiment, shall we?" He waved his hand dramatically, and the audience leaned forward, curious. "We're going to see how you handle the unexpected, Liv." At that very moment, as if the universe were listening, a sudden flicker of lights passed through the studio. The bright overhead lights dimmed for a second, then brightened again. The audience gasped softly, some looking around with surprise. The host blinked, a little unnerved. Must be a power surge," he said, trying to maintain his usual bravado. Keanu didn't flinch. He remained seated calmly, his expression serene. "Sometimes life surprises us," he said softly, almost as if commenting on something ordinary. "It reminds us that we can't control everything." The audience murmured. A few people laughed nervously, while others whispered, "That was weird." The host, feeling a mixture of amusement and mild unease, decided to push forward. "All right, let's keep going," he said. "You believe in karma, fate, energy, call it what you want. If that's true, then maybe this little incident is a sign. What do you think?" Keanu leaned back slightly, folding his hands. "I think it's a reminder," he said gently. "Life is unpredictable. We can plan, we can try to control, but some moments are beyond us. How we respond, that's what matters." The host laughed, though it was less confident this time. "You're calm under pressure," he said. "I'll give you that. But let's see if you can handle something even stranger." As he spoke, another unexpected thing happened. A soft tapping sound echoed across the studio. At first, everyone thought it was part of the set, maybe equipment shaking or a loose panel. But the sound grew slightly louder, rhythmic, almost like someone or something was trying to get attention. The audience gasped again. A few people leaned forward, curious and a little nervous. The host's eyes widened. "What on earth?" he began, but Keanu raised a hand slightly, his calm demeanor unshaken. "It's okay," he said gently. "Sometimes life speaks in ways we don't expect. It's a reminder to notice what's around us." The host tried to laugh it off, but his nervous chuckle didn't reach the audience, who were now fully attentive. The tapping continued briefly, then stopped as suddenly as it had begun. There was silence for a moment, a shared breath of suspense across the studio. "Well," the host said finally, "that was strange." Coincidence? Fate? Who knows? He turned to Keanu, raising an eyebrow. How does your calm mind explain that? Keanu smiled faintly. I don't try to explain everything immediately, he said. I observe, I reflect, and I learn. Sometimes surprises are lessons in patience, humility, and awareness. That's enough for me. The audience was now completely captivated. Even the camera crew moved quietly, sensing the unusual moment. The host felt a strange mix of frustration and curiosity. He had come to dominate the conversation, to entertain through mockery, but the unexpected events, combined with Keanu's calm wisdom, were changing everything. Trying to recover, he decided to bring out one more story, something that might provoke an emotional reaction. He pulled out a card about a difficult time in Keanu's life, when a close friend had faced serious challenges. The host read it aloud, exaggerating the drama for effect. You see this? This could have made anyone angry, upset, or frustrated. How did you stay so calm through all of it? Keanu listened carefully, his eyes calm and reflective. It was hard, he admitted. Very hard. But reacting with anger would not have helped anyone. I focused on what I could do, on being present for the people I cared about, and on staying true to myself. That's the choice I made. The host leaned back in his chair, rubbing his forehead. He had expected laughter, drama, or surprise. Instead, he found himself quietly listening, almost unconsciously respecting Keanu's approach. The audience, sensing the shift, began to applaud softly, their admiration clear. Then, just as the host was about to speak again, something even more unexpected happened. A small bird somehow found its way into the studio and perched on a railing above the audience. It chirped loudly, flying briefly across the stage before landing near one of the lights. The audience gasped, some laughing nervously, others clapping in surprise. The host's confident smirk faltered, and he froze, unsure how to react. Keanu smiled gently, watching the bird. Life is full of surprises, he said softly, almost as if commenting on the moment naturally. We cannot control everything. But we can notice, appreciate, and respond with kindness. The host swallowed, nodding slowly. The audience erupted into applause, not for a joke or a witty remark, but for the calm, peaceful way Keanu handled the unexpected. The energy in the room had shifted completely. What had started as a show meant for humor and mockery had transformed into something deeper and unplanned, live demonstration of humility, patience, and the unpredictability of life. The host tried to speak, but the words felt heavier than usual. Well, he began, then paused, letting the silence settle. The audience laughed lightly at his hesitation, but it was clear that even the host was beginning to reflect on the unusual chain of events. Keanu leaned forward slightly, smiling. It's okay, he said. These moments are part of life. They remind us to stay present, to notice the small details, and to treat every moment with respect and awareness. The host nodded slowly, feeling a strange sense of humility he hadn't felt before in front of an audience. The applause continued, the energy in the studio more powerful than before, a mixture of awe, respect, and quiet joy. The cameras captured it all, recording an episode that would be remembered not for jokes or ridicule, but for a series of unexpected moments and the calm wisdom of one remarkable man. And in that moment, as the bird flew away and the lights returned to normal, the host realized that today's show had changed not just for the audience, but for himself. He had come to mock, to tease, and to entertain, but he was leaving with something far more valuable, a reminder that calmness, patience, and kindness could be more powerful than any joke, and that life often surprises us when we least expect it. After the unusual events on stage, the studio atmosphere had changed completely. The audience was still buzzing, but it wasn't the usual excitement of jokes or sarcasm. Instead, there was a quiet admiration, a sense of wonder at what had just happened. Even the cameras, now rolling steadily, seemed to capture something different, not just a talk show, but a moment that felt real and meaningful. The host, usually confident and in full control, was feeling something unfamiliar: reflection. Backstage, during a brief commercial break, the host paced slowly behind the curtains. He rubbed his hands together, thinking about the moments on stage: the flickering lights, the unexpected bird, and Keanu Reeves' calm responses. Usually, he would have laughed at any surprise, turned it into a joke, and moved on. But today was different. For the first time, he felt that humor alone wasn't enough to explain the world. He thought about how he had prepared for weeks, crafting jokes that he believed would make the audience roar with laughter. Every line had been carefully calculated to highlight what he saw as strange beliefs or naive kindness. But Keanu had turned every attempt into a lesson, not with anger or drama, but with simple words and quiet composure. The host realized that this was something he hadn't expected, and it left him both puzzled and intrigued. Meanwhile, in the studio, the audience whispered excitedly to each other. "Did you see how calm he was?" one person said. "He didn't get upset at all, even with the jokes." Another replied, "It's like he's untouchable, but in a good way. Not prideful, just peaceful." The energy in the room was shifting from entertainment to admiration, and everyone could feel it. The cameras returned to the stage, and the host took a deep breath, walking back into his chair. The applause subsided, leaving a gentle silence. He looked at Keanu, who was sitting patiently, hands folded, eyes calm, smiling faintly. The host hesitated for a moment. Normally, he would have jumped straight into another joke or a sarcastic remark. But today, he felt an unusual pause, a need to speak differently. "Keanu," he began slowly, "you've handled everything so well. I expected reactions: anger, frustration, even a little panic. But you stayed calm through it all. I have to admit, I'm impressed." The audience clapped softly, acknowledging the rare moment of genuine admiration on the host's face. Keanu nodded gently. "Thank you," he said. "But it's not about impressing anyone. It's about how we respond to life. Challenges, surprises, and mistakes, they are all part of the journey. We can either react with stress or respond with understanding." The host leaned back, his smirk gone, replaced by thoughtfulness. "Respond with understanding," he repeated quietly. "I've mocked beliefs, poked fun at kindness, and assumed the world could be reduced to jokes. But, maybe there's more to it than that." He looked out at the audience, noticing their focused expressions, their nods, their silent appreciation for Keanu's words. It was a humbling sight. "Tell me something," the host said, his voice softer than before. "How do you keep your calm in situations where everything goes wrong? On set, in life, or even in moments like today, when, well, the unexpected happens." Keanu smiled faintly, his voice gentle but steady. "It comes from understanding that life is not always within our control," he said. "We can influence some things, plan for many others, but surprises will always come. Calmness, patience, and reflection help us respond in a way that doesn't create harm or regret. That's all I try to do." The audience was quiet, fully absorbed. There was no laughter now, only respect. The host's usual energy, designed to entertain, had softened into something reflective. He realized that for the first time in his career, he wasn't leading the narrative. He was listening, genuinely listening, and learning. The host cleared his throat. "You know," he said slowly, "I've spent years pointing out flaws, mocking ideas, and assuming that cleverness alone wins. But today, something feels different. Maybe I've underestimated the power of calmness, or humility, or kindness. Watching you, I realize there's strength in gentleness." Keanu nodded gently. "Kindness and humility are not weaknesses," he said. "They are choices. They shape our actions, our relationships, and even how others perceive us. Life rewards sincerity and compassion, even if it doesn't always feel immediate." The host leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "I want to ask something personal," he said. "Have you ever doubted yourself? Have you ever faced moments where you thought, maybe I'm wrong? Or maybe all this, patience and calmness, isn't enough?" Keanu paused, thoughtful. "Yes, many times," he admitted. "Life doesn't always go as planned. I've had moments of fear, doubt, and frustration. But those moments taught me something important, that doubt is natural, but our response matters more. If we act with integrity, kindness, and awareness, we move forward. If we react with anger or frustration, we lose our way." The host nodded slowly, absorbing the words. "Integrity, kindness, awareness, those are powerful tools," he said. "I've spent years trying to win with humor, with cleverness. But maybe I've overlooked simpler, stronger tools." The audience clapped softly, sensing the rare moment of reflection from the host. Keanu smiled, not boastfully, but gently, as if encouraging the realization. "Life teaches us in ways we often ignore," he said. "The lessons are everywhere, in challenges, in surprises, in simple acts of kindness. We only need to notice them." The host looked down at his hands, thinking. For years, he had built a persona sharp, witty, mocking, but in that moment, he realized how much he had relied on performance rather than reflection. He had come to the show expecting to lead, to entertain, to dominate. Instead, he had been quietly challenged, not by confrontation, but by calm observation, gentle words, and unexpected events. He looked up at Keanu. "You've changed the mood of this show," he said. "I thought I was in charge, but, somehow, you've made everyone pause. Me included. That's surprising." Keanu smiled softly. "It's not about changing anyone," he said. "It's about sharing a perspective. If it helps even one person pause, reflect, and respond differently, that's enough." The audience erupted into gentle applause, some standing, some whispering words of admiration. It wasn't the loud, comedic response the host had expected, but it was far more meaningful. There was respect, attention, and the quiet power of a lesson being absorbed in real time. The host took a deep breath, leaning back. "You know," he said, almost to himself, "this is humbling. I came here to mock, to entertain. Instead, I'm learning. Maybe life's surprises aren't meant to be feared or laughed at. Maybe they're lessons." Keanu nodded, his eyes kind. "Exactly. Life is unpredictable, but we have the power to respond in ways that create understanding, peace, and growth. That's the true lesson." The audience clapped again, this time louder, their energy a mix of respect and admiration. Even the crew seemed affected, quiet, attentive, moved by the unexpected depth of the episode. The host, normally the center of attention, felt a shift inside himself. Humor and mockery were entertaining, but they weren't the only way to connect. Reflection, calmness, and understanding carried a power that jokes never could. As the cameras continued rolling, the host spoke again, his voice thoughtful. "Keanu, you've taught me something today," he said. "Not just about life, but about listening, observing, and responding. I think I've underestimated the quiet strength of kindness and humility." Keanu smiled, a gentle, reassuring smile. "It's never too late to learn," he said softly. "Every moment is an opportunity to pause, reflect, and act wisely. That's all life asks of us." The audience erupted in applause once more, this time louder, more heartfelt. The studio felt different, less like a stage for jokes, and more like a shared space for reflection and understanding. The host, feeling a mixture of humility and curiosity, realized that the day had transformed him as much as it had entertained the audience. And as the cameras captured every expression, every gesture, it became clear that this episode would be remembered not for mockery or comedy, but for the unexpected lessons, the quiet wisdom, and the powerful simplicity of one remarkable man. The final segment of the show began with a quiet intensity. The usual chatter and laughter of the audience had shifted into a focused attentiveness. Cameras rolled steadily, capturing the scene that was becoming far more than a simple talk show. The host, still seated in his leather chair, took a deep breath. For the first time in years, he felt something he had rarely felt on stage: humility. He looked at Keanu Reeves, whose calm smile seemed to radiate patience and wisdom. The audience could feel the energy between them, a shift from entertainment to reflection, from jokes to something meaningful. The host had expected to dominate the conversation, but he realized that today was not about control. It was about listening, learning, and seeing the unexpected unfold. Keanu, the host began, his voice quieter than usual, today has been unusual. I came here expecting laughter, mockery, maybe a little drama. Instead, I'm not sure how to describe it. You've changed the mood, the energy, the way people are thinking. How do you do that? Keanu leaned back slightly, his gaze calm and gentle. I don't try to change anyone, he said. I only try to live honestly, kindly, and with awareness. If that encourages someone to pause and reflect, then it's a small effect, but a meaningful one. The audience clapped softly. There were whispers of admiration, nods, and a few quiet exclamations of surprise. Some audience members, who had come expecting jokes and mockery, were now captivated by the sincerity of the conversation. It was unusual, unexpected, and deeply engaging. The host shifted in his seat, rubbing his forehead. He had seen viral moments happen before, clips of comedians, celebrities, or outrageous incidents, but he sensed that today's episode could become something different. Something that wouldn't just be watched, but remembered. Earlier, he said, you mentioned life's surprises, and we saw a few today: the lights flickering, the tapping sounds, even the bird that appeared out of nowhere. Some might call that coincidence. Some might call it luck. Others, fate. How do you interpret things like that? Keanu smiled gently. I see them as reminders, he said. Life is unpredictable. Surprises happen whether we expect them or not. They are moments to observe, to reflect, and to respond with calm and awareness. Sometimes they teach us lessons we didn't know we needed. The host nodded slowly, his usual bravado softened by the weight of the moment. I understand that now. I came here ready to lead, to entertain, maybe even to ridicule. But I've realized something important today. People remember kindness, patience, and sincerity more than jokes or cleverness. And I think I've underestimated that for a long time. The audience erupted into applause, some standing, some clapping softly, their admiration for Keanu clear. The host looked around, noticing the reactions of the people in the studio. Cameras captured the smiles, the nods, and even the quiet conversations among viewers who were reflecting on what they had just witnessed. Keanu leaned forward slightly, his eyes gentle. It's never too late to notice what matters, he said. Every day gives us a chance to pause, reflect, and act with kindness. That's the lesson I hope everyone takes from moments like this. The host smiled, feeling a mixture of gratitude and humility. You know, he said, I've interviewed hundreds of people over the years, but this feels different. I think I've learned more in one day than I have in months of preparation. And it's all because you approached life and this conversation with calm and kindness. Keanu nodded. We all learn from each other, he said. Some lessons are loud and dramatic. Others are quiet and gentle. Both have value. The audience clapped again, the energy in the studio more respectful and engaged than ever. The host looked at them, realizing that this episode had reached beyond entertainment. It was now a shared experience, a moment of reflection for everyone present. The host shifted his tone slightly, a smile returning to his face, though softer and more genuine than before. All right, let's have some fun one last time, he said. But instead of jokes, let's celebrate what we've learned today. Keanu, if you could give one message to the world, something simple but powerful, what would it be? Keanu paused, considering carefully. Treat each other with kindness, he said softly. Notice the small details in life. Respond with calm and patience. Live with awareness and integrity. If we all try to do that, even in small ways, the world becomes better for everyone. The audience erupted into louder applause, some cheering, others wiping tears from their eyes. There was a shared feeling of connection, a rare moment when a live event transcended its purpose to entertain and became something meaningful. The host nodded slowly, his mind racing. He had expected to mock, to provoke, and to entertain. Instead, he had experienced a lesson in humility, patience, and kindness. He realized that sometimes the most powerful moments are not loud or dramatic, they are quiet, sincere, and unexpected. As the cameras continued rolling, social media reactions began flooding in. Clips of the episode, showing Keanu's calm demeanor, the host's reflection, and the unexpected events in the studio, were shared widely. Comments praised the actor's humility, the host's willingness to reflect, and the rare combination of humor, surprise, and genuine lesson. The story began to trend online, not as a joke, but as an inspiring moment in live television. The host looked at the monitors backstage, seeing the reactions from viewers across the world. I didn't expect this, he whispered to himself. I thought it would be entertainment, but it's something more. He turned to Keanu, who smiled kindly at him. You see, Keanu said softly, life teaches us in ways we don't expect. The moment you notice, you learn something valuable. The host nodded slowly. I've learned that today, he said. I've learned that calmness, kindness, and awareness are stronger than sarcasm or jokes. I've learned that unexpected moments can teach the biggest lessons. And I've learned that listening, really listening, is more powerful than speaking. Keanu smiled gently, his eyes full of understanding. Exactly. That's all anyone can do. The audience continued clapping as the final minutes of the show approached. Some stood, giving a standing ovation, moved by the sincerity and quiet power of the episode. The host took a deep breath, feeling a mix of gratitude, humility, and newfound understanding. He had expected laughter and mockery. Instead, he had witnessed something profound, the power of calm, kindness, and the unexpected lessons life offers. As the show came to a close, the host looked directly into the camera. Today has been unusual, he said, his voice calm and sincere. We've seen surprises, lessons, and reminders that life is unpredictable. But we've also seen the power of kindness, patience, and humility. Thank you, Keanu Reeves, for showing us that even in the most unexpected moments, we can find meaning and reflection. Keanu smiled, nodding gently. Thank you, he said softly. Remember to notice the small moments, treat others with respect, and live with awareness. Life rewards those who do. The audience clapped one final time, some cheering, some wiping tears. The cameras zoomed in on Keanu's calm smile, capturing a moment that would be remembered far beyond the show itself. The host, for the first time in his career, felt that he had been part of something meaningful, not just entertainment, but a moment of shared reflection and learning. After the show ended, social media continued to explode with praise for the episode. Clips went viral, showing the host's reflection, Keanu's calm demeanor, and the unexpected events that had changed the entire dynamic of the show. Comments flooded in, people praised humility, kindness, and the ability to handle surprises gracefully. Many viewers said they had learned something valuable and that the episode had inspired them to reflect on their own lives. Backstage, the host shook Keanu's hand, a genuine smile on his face. Thank you, he said. Today was something I didn't expect. I think I've learned more than I've ever learned on this show. Keanu nodded, smiling gently. I'm glad, he said softly. Every day gives us lessons. Sometimes, we just need to notice them. As the crew packed up and the studio lights dimmed, the host felt a quiet satisfaction. Today had started as an attempt at humor, mockery, and entertainment. But it had ended as a lesson in humility, patience, kindness, and the unexpected power of reflection. He realized that life's surprises could teach the most meaningful lessons, and that sometimes, the quietest voices carry the strongest messages. And in that moment, he understood something important: true strength is not in mocking, cleverness, or sarcasm, but in calmness, awareness, and the willingness to learn. The audience left the studio that night talking about the unexpected lessons, inspired by the calm wisdom of Keanu Reeves and the rare humility of the host. The episode became a story shared across social media, news, and conversations around the world. People remembered not the jokes, but the lesson, that life's surprises are opportunities, kindness is strength, and reflection is a gift.